Hey folks, welcome back to the show. Today we're diving deep into something a little different, something you use every day but probably never think twice about. We're talking about the wild world of everyday objects, man. You know, those things you use without even realizing how they came to be? Get ready to have your mind blown because we're about to uncover some seriously unbelievable origins. Alright, let's kick things off with the Post-it note. You know, those little squares of paper that somehow hold your entire life together? Turns out this office staple was a complete accident. In 1968, 3M scientist Dr. Spencer Silver tried to create a super strong adhesive. Instead, he made a weak, pressure-sensitive adhesive. Fast forward, Arthur Fry, another 3M scientist, had a problem. His bookmarks kept falling out of his hymn book. Then he thought of Dr. Silver's adhesive. It was perfect for bookmarks, and that's how the Post-it note was born. Now let's talk about the microwave oven, the hero of countless late-night cravings. I mean, who hasn't used this thing to resurrect a slice of pizza at 2 in the morning? But did you know that this kitchen staple has its roots in World War II technology? It's true, we're talking about radar technology, man. In 1945, an engineer named Percy Spencer was working with a magnetron, which is the heart of a radar system. He's messing around with this thing and he notices that a candy bar in his pocket started to melt. Now most people would freak out, right? But Percy, he's a scientist. He grabs some popcorn, throws it near the magnetron, and boom, popcorn explosion. That's when he realized the potential of microwave radiation for cooking. Okay, this next one is a personal favorite, bubble wrap. You know, the stuff that's impossible to resist popping? Turns out, it was never meant to be the ultimate stress reliever or the protector of our precious packages. Nope, back in 1957, two engineers, Alfred Fielding and Mark Chavan, were trying to invent textured wallpaper. Imagine that bubble wrap on your walls. Don't know about you, but I'm kind of digging the retro vibe. Anyway, their brilliant idea didn't exactly take off. People weren't ready for plastic bubbly walls, go figure. But Fielding and Chavan, they didn't give up. They realized that this weird air-filled material had some serious potential. It was lightweight, it was insulating, it was perfect for protecting fragile stuff, and thus, the bubble wrap we know and love was born. Alright, let's talk about a true toy legend, the Slinky. That mesmerizing metal coil has been mesmerizing kids for decades, but it turns out the Slinky wasn't originally meant for fun and games. Nope, this toy has its roots in the military-industrial complex. In 1943, a naval engineer named Richard James was working on a spring that could stabilize sensitive instruments on ships during rough seas. One day he accidentally knocked one of these springs off a shelf, and instead of crashing to the ground, it kind of slinked. It walked down a stack of books, then off the table, then across the floor, maintaining its shape the whole way. Richard saw that and thought, hey, that's pretty cool. His wife Betty came up with the name Slinky, and the rest, as they say, is history. Next up we've got Play-Doh, that colorful, moldable dough that's been a staple of childhood for generations. But did you know that Play-Doh was never meant to be a toy? Nope, this stuff has a much more utilitarian past. We're going back to the 1930s, a time when coal was king for heating homes. But coal, it came with a problem. Soot, it got everywhere, especially on wallpaper. And that's where Play-Doh comes in. See, it was originally invented as a wallpaper cleaner. This doughy substance was great at lifting soot off walls without damaging the paper. But then, something interesting happened. Kids started getting their hands on this cleaning compound and realized, hey, this stuff is fun to play with. Let's move on to a classic summer treat, the Slurpee. That icy, sugary concoction that's perfect on a hot day. But this iconic beverage wasn't the result of some carefully crafted recipe. Nope, it was a happy accident. We're going back to the late 1950s, and a Dairy Queen owner named Omar Knedlik was having some trouble with his soda fountain. It kept breaking down, leaving him without a way to serve cold drinks. Now Omar, he was a resourceful guy. He started keeping bottles of soda in the freezer so they'd be extra cold for his customers. But when he took them out, the soda was partially frozen, slushy even. Customers loved it. They couldn't get enough of this weird, icy drink. Omar saw an opportunity and ran with it, eventually creating the Slurpee machine. Let's talk about Velcro, that magical fastener everywhere from shoes to spacesuits. This ingenious invention was inspired by nature's design. In 1941, Swiss engineer Georges de Mestral noticed burrs clinging to his dog's fur. He saw tiny hooks that latched onto loops, like fur or fabric. That was his aha moment. After years of experimenting, he invented the hook and loop system we know as Velcro. Alright, let's talk breakfast cereal, specifically cornflakes. It's been a breakfast staple for over a century, but its origins are a little, shall we say, unconventional. We're talking about the late 1800s, and a physician named John Harvey Kellogg was running a sanitarium, a health resort of sorts. Now Dr. Kellogg, he had some, let's say, interesting ideas about health and wellness. He was a big believer in vegetarianism and a bland diet, which he thought would curb people's, urges. One day, he and his brother, Will Keith Kellogg, were experimenting in the kitchen, trying to make a healthy bread substitute. They accidentally left some boiled wheat sitting out, and it went stale. Instead of tossing it, they decided to roll it out into dough, but it cracked and flaked apart. They toasted those flakes and boom, cornflakes were born. Okay, this next one is a classic tale of turning a mistake into a success story. We're talking about Scotch tape. That clear adhesive tape that's a lifesaver in a pinch. But did you know that Scotch tape was initially intended to be a tough, waterproof sandpaper? Back in the 1920s, a 3M engineer named Richard Drew was working on a new type of abrasive for the booming automotive industry. He came up with a strong adhesive, but it had one major flaw. It wasn't very abrasive. In fact, it was downright weak. People at 3M were ready to scrap the whole thing, but Richard Drew, he saw potential in this gentle adhesive. He thought, hey, this stuff might be good for something else. And he was right. It was perfect for mending books, sealing packages, and a million other everyday tasks. Last but not least, let's talk about Listerine, the mouthwash that's been banishing bad breath for over a century. But this oral hygiene staple has a surprising past. It wasn't originally meant for your mouth at all. We're going back to the late 1800s, and a surgeon named Joseph Lister was pioneering antiseptic surgery. He was using carbolic acid to disinfect surgical instruments and clean wounds, which dramatically reduced infections. Inspired by Lister's work, a chemist named Joseph Lawrence created an antiseptic formula based on essential oils. He called it Listerine, in honor of the pioneering surgeon. Now, this original Listerine was strong stuff. It was used as a surgical antiseptic, a floor cleaner, and even a treatment for gonorrhea. It wasn't until the 1920s that Listerine was marketed as a mouthwash, capitalizing on the growing obsession with oral hygiene. And there you have it, folks. 10 unbelievable origin stories about everyday objects that prove sometimes the greatest discoveries happened by pure chance. Who knew that so many of the things we take for granted came about because someone messed up in the lab or had a happy accident? It just goes to show sometimes the best ideas come from the most unexpected places.